All right, man. We're live. What's up, folks at home? Thank you for joining the latest edition of Monday Night Live. Me and Brent we had a little bit of technical difficulties, but thank God we got it figured out. It was just like seems like every fifth or sixth time there's something like little small that happens, technologically wise, and we got to figure it out. He was gonna have to do it on his little bitty phone, but luckily he's got a laptop, so now we can see his beautiful blue head.
Yep.
Um, so what's up, man? How you been doing?
Doing good, man. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you on here. I've never actually talked to you. I've seen you. I fished the BFL and the LBL divisions, and I waved at you before, but I've never actually got a chance to sit down and talk to you. So looking forward to this for sure. So are you in Tennessee still? Is that where you're staying at? Or are you down south?
Man, right now I'm in Florence, Alabama. I'm
Oh,
gonna
okay.
be here, I'll be here till the championship, the Toyota Series championship. So when Kentucky, I kind of decided I was leaving Kentucky Lake. When I gave up my place up there, it's kind of sad, but I hadn't really had a home. I've just been kind of a gypsy. But
Mm-hmm.
so I'll live in Florida for 4 months, and then I'll live here for a couple months. This year I went up north for 3 months, so I'm just bouncing around, man, trying to find my way.
Yeah, yeah,
Going where the fishing's good.
man. It's like all your Facebook pictures lately have been big old fat smallmouths. I thought you moved up north. So talk about that, man. Well, let me preface that by saying the people on the stream have heard me say this before, but I got my taste of Mille Lacs for the first time this year. First time I've ever
Yeah,
been up there. Pretty sick, man. It was unbelievable, like the amount of 4 to 5 pound smallmouth, and
yeah,
seeing your pictures on Facebook kind of brought me back. So you spent quite a bit of time up there, didn't you? Like over
yeah.
the last several months or half a
Yeah.
year or whatever.
Yeah, so I've been going for about the last 6 or 7 years. I've been going somewhere every summer up north for smallmouth.
Okay.
It kind of started back when my buddy Micah Fraser was trying to make the elites. He invited me to practice with him on St. Clair, and then the next summer, Troy Hollowell and I went up to Traverse City and fished a lot of those little lakes around Lake Michigan, like George and man, I need to turn all these notifications off. Uh, then I was like, man, I'm going to start taking my parents. I took them to Mille Lacs in 2017. I took them to Burt Mullet the next year, and for a long time, man, I've wanted to guide in Florida in the winter and up north in the summertime. But I just didn't want to show up north and be like, hey, man, I'm a guide here. So this summer, a good friend of mine, John from Hawaii. A lot of my buddies know John. Um, he was in town, and we just took off, man, and we went to Champlain, and we left June 30th and just got back about 2 weeks ago. So, but what it did, it kind of allowed me a lot of time at St. Lawrence and Ontario. Kind of learn my way around, where to stay, how to get around the river, get around the lake, and now I'm gonna guide next summer on St. Lawrence River and Lake Ontario. So
Sweet.
pretty excited about it, man.
That's
Pretty
cool,
excited.
dude. That's really cool. So of the lakes that you fished up there, did you have a favorite one?
Um, by far Ontario. Uh, but that was all we fished. We fished Champlain. I had a terrible. I was up there to fish the Toyota Series. So the Toyota Series Championship is on Pickwick.
Mm-hmm.
I've been guiding on Pickwick for a couple of years. I've had a decent tournament success on Pickwick. So obviously, I want to try to fish for this $250,000 at the end of October on Pickwick. So I fished the Central Division, which are kind of my home lakes, but I was having to drive from Vero Beach every once a month up here, which is 12, 14 hours. And I bombed. I had the worst two tournament finishes I've had in years. So long story short, I didn't make it. So the only chance for me to make it was to go and make it through the Northerns. So that was part of the trip was going to happen regardless. We were going up north to fish for smallmouth, but I didn't know it was going to be such a pressure situation where like I had to catch them. And then I
Yeah.
bombed at Champlain. I finished fourth at St. Lawrence. So I got back in the hunt, and I basically needed a top 20 at Potomac to make the championship, and I finished 15th. So I made the championship in the last spot, 25th place.
Hey, that's all that matters, man. You made it.
So, you know, not trying to ramble, but there was kind of a method behind the madness of going up there. But again, I was going to go fish the Northern Toyotas, but I was going to do it for fun. And then it turned out like, hey, man, you got to catch some fish up here. You're not going to get to come to Pickwick. But I made it. So here we are.
Yeah. So that tournament's, when is the Pickwick Championship coming up? It's pretty soon, isn't it?
October 28th. Yeah.
Yeah. That's right around the corner.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. And I mean, it's, I made it last year was the first year they had this big championship. I mean, for that level, I mean, we're fishing first place is $250,000, man. I mean, it's a pretty big opportunity for, you know, not a national tour level event, but I'm glad to be there. I've got some experience on Pickwick this time of year, and some of it's good and some of it's really bad, but can't win it if you're not in it, you know?
Yeah. I'm glad it's in October and not September because I've been to Pickwick twice, fished the Toyota Owners Tournament.
Yep.
And it was tough. It was like the second or third week in September.
Yeah.
It was pretty tough. I mean, of course, I went in there blind. You know, we only had a day to pre-fish. But, you know, the Tennessee River is notoriously tough in September for most people.
Yeah.
So that's good. Maybe you guys will have some good bags in that tournament.
I think it'll be a 20-pound a day to win kind of deal. The only tournament I fished here that time of year was 3 years ago. It was an ABA team championship, the team trail championship. And my buddy Zach Parker and I, we did not know that we were around this kind of fish because we found them up in the middle of the day. And, you know, we were hoping we could catch 18 pounds a day. When we got out there that morning, the first morning, we had some of the biggest blowups I've ever had in my life. And like legit, not just a fisherman's tale. If we could have hooked and landed everything that bit us in 2 days, we'd have had over 60 pounds for 2 days. So I know that is something like that is possible to find here. You know, the fishery has enough big fish that somebody could really, really catch them, especially that time of year. It's hard to catch that kind of weight. Well, it's hard to catch that kind of weight any time of year, but it's not going to happen here in September. You know, Kentucky Lake, September is when I was able to catch the big ones on Topwater, but it seems to happen here a little bit later. So
what are some of the differences in Pickwick and Kentucky? Are they the same, basically the same?
You know, to me, as far as the fall fishing, everything's a little deeper here. You know, a lot of our ledges on Kentucky Lake in the summer were, you know, they topped out around 15 to 20. A lot of stuff tops out at like 25 here. And as far as when you get on into this time of year, what I looked for at Kentucky, there's not enough shallow water to do what I did there in September. It was really based on a water level thing. The topwater bite was not so much a temperature thing. And it takes an extra month to get the water low enough here to start kind of targeting those big topwater.
Yeah, I've seen it a couple times down on Kentucky Lake, and you've seen it 1,000 times, but where those gizzards get up on those shallower bars and all hell breaks loose.
Yes.
That's pretty crazy. That's crazy, man. It's like I don't know. It's like a shark hunt out there.
It is.
It's good stuff, man.
One of my favorite stories, man, I love telling is I was in a 2-day BFL, and I actually lost some really big ones. I had like 23 or 24 pounds the first day, but we were standing in line to weigh in, and I heard my co-angler like whispering to another guy, and he was like, man, it was like he was throwing into a pond full of sharks.
Yeah.
But that went away. That went away, folks. It turned into you were throwing in a pond full of carps, not sharks.
That's right, man. Yeah, no kidding, man. So let me check and see if we got some questions in here real quick. And I want to talk a little bit about the changes that Kentucky Lake has went through over the last several years. And you kind of got to see the beginning of that. I'm scrolling through these comments here. I know there was a couple questions in here for you. Oh, here's somebody trying to bribe you. Andy says, since you're not at Kentucky Lake now, any good fishing holes that you could tell me about? Doesn't hurt to ask. You never know.
Yeah, he's right, and I still get a lot of calls about when people are going there, suggestions. But as the lake as the fishing kind of got poor, and now it's coming back, the lake has totally changed. Everything I did there was offshore, not deep. A lot of those fall tournaments I won, I was fishing 2 foot deep, but I was out in the middle of the lake. But the fish are very bank oriented up there now. So honestly, my stuff would probably be worthless to most people. And that's the honest truth. If it was any good, I would have already tried to auction my waypoints off.
That's what I was going to say. You could probably sell them on eBay anyway.
Well, David Genetico and I talked about that when I was like leaving there. I said, man, do you think somebody would pay for these waypoints? And he was like, absolutely, man. He said, somebody would want them. I said, because I literally have no intention of going back there. And I said, what do you think they're worth? And we kind of talked about it. And I on the download had somebody offer me like 10 grand for them. And I was like, nah, man. I had one or two that had won a lot more money than that. I think they were worth more than that. But
yeah, exactly.
I wish I would have sold them. I've actually deleted them by accident. So I don't even have them anymore.
Okay. Well, that stops all that nonsense altogether.
Yeah. I could make up some fake ones, I guess, but I'm not that kind of dude.
Yeah. Stephanie wants to know, since you've lived in multiple places, where is the best fishing?
The thing that I really enjoy, I really love, is the going up north for smallmouth. St. Lawrence River was unbelievable this summer, and Lake Ontario. But my all-time favorite trip I've ever taken was Mille Lacs in Minnesota. And I tell everybody, if you love bass fishing, you need to take a trip up north to one of those really good fisheries. And if people are like me, I always thought, okay, I'm going to New York, I'm going to Michigan, I'm going to be out in the city, and it's going to be like hustle and bustle. And when you get up there, I mean, like upstate New York is, I'm from Tennessee, man. I met more rednecks in upstate New York than I know from Tennessee. Like, it is country. Yeah. So, it's hard to find a Walmart sometimes, you know what I'm saying? But it's just, everything's so pristine up there. You don't have the trash all over the shore, and I don't know how they take such good care of their fisheries up there. But us Southerners should take some lessons from those guys.
They're pretty strict. I remember when we were at Mille Lacs, there was, like, for the walleye. Well, first of all, they have a season, where you can't keep any smallmouth up until, I don't know, like the first part of May or something, middle of May. And then it's, you're not allowed to keep many. And then I don't know if there's a slot on those up there, but I remember the walleye having a slot that was like 21 to 24 or something. Like, you could keep one in between 21 and 24, and you could only keep one a day. I may not be completely accurate, but it was a real strict slot, and it's not like you were taking 10 or 15 walleyes home. You could just keep one walleye. So they've really managed that. The North Minnesota and all that. They really have great management systems, and they keep track of all that stuff. Which like you said, it's nice that there's that much hands-on going on out there on those bodies of water to keep them. Well, that's why Mille Lacs is so dang good. If everybody was taking those 4-pounders out of there, they'd be gone, obviously.
Yeah. I've got a lot of that'd be a whole nother show, man, talking about fisheries management. I don't know. We had such a struggle. I'm sure we'll get into the Kentucky Lake debacle, but just to see, like when we were in New York this past summer, when you take your boat out, there's somebody there to inspect your boat for invasives. And if you want to, that they'll even wash your boat for you for free right there at the ramp, in case you're going to another fishery, so you don't transport any invasive grasses or even little shrimps and things, little vertebrates that might be in the grass and stuck to your prop or whatever. So they really care about their fisheries. Texas is really good too. That's on the other end of the country, but they probably have some of the most intense fishing pressure of any lakes in the country, and they continue to crank out crazy numbers of big bass every year. So they really take pride in their fisheries as well.
Yeah, when I was on my way to Mille Lacs, I stopped in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and jumped in the boat with my buddy Rich, and we were going through this little subdivision area. I mean, he said there's like 100 lakes that are between 250 and 500 acres within an hour of his house, which blew me away. But we were going through this little subdivision, and we park in this parking lot, and the lake's down the hill. So you get all your stuff ready, then you drive down the hill and launch your boat. But as we're driving down the hill, there was this guy just sitting in a lawn chair down there. And he was the guy that checked your boat, just like you're talking about. He got out, he inspected your live well and your bilge, and Rich had a little bit of water in his live well. So the guy took some like Clorox wipes or something and kind of disinfected the inside of his live well, and make sure he took a sponge and took all the water out of it, and then he sprayed it down really good, just to keep those invasive species from being transferred from lake to lake, which is that's good stuff, man. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Jeff's got one for you, and we were going to dive into the topwaters, so this may just start it off. Best fall topwater bait. That's kind of a tough question, I would imagine.
Yeah, it is. When I like walking baits, and I like the biggest one I can get away with. So if you're on a fishery where you have a gizzard shad population, that's what the biggest bass are going to be targeting in the fall, always. So I like to throw, back in the day, I just threw his bone super spook, was kind of my bait. And then on Kentucky Lake is that pattern started getting more popular and more people started doing it. I started kind of changing brands. Right now, if I had to tie on one bait, if you only gave me one rod in the fall, it would be an Evergreen Shower Blows 125. Kind of like that.
Yeah. I caught a big old muskie on this a couple days ago at Kincaid, dude. They love it. I almost lost. I just got this, right? And I'd literally made like 4 casts, and I got this massive blow up. And I hooked up, and it took about 5 seconds to realize it was too big to be a bass. and then I'm like, okay, how does he got it? Is he got it all the way down, or is it on the outside? Because I was worried about him slicing my braid off. And luckily, I just had he kind of got it from the side. So he had all 3 hooks. Basically, the front hook was in his lip, and then the 2 were on the outside. And by the time I got him up to the boat, just this rear hook was on there.
Yeah.
But man, I was like, please don't take this bait. I just got it. I'm just trying to figure it out. But yeah, this bait's pretty cool, man. I mean, it walks and casts extremely well. And I don't know. I'm going to be throwing it around a whole lot more. I want to get the next size down too. I've heard some good things about that smaller size.
Yeah.
You ever fish that?
Not as much. Man, I mean, I actually would usually go up another size.
Go big or go home.
I throw the 150 quite a bit. But again, people, you have to understand, most of my experience with those baits, Kentucky Lake was so good. When you found what you were looking for, you almost had to deter the 3-pounders from trying to get your bait. That was kind of why we used to throw the big giant swim baits. You'd have a school of 500 fish, and the majority of them are 3-pounders, and the big ones couldn't get to your bait quick enough, so you had to throw something in there a 3-pounder couldn't eat. So, but I still, that 125 is about as small as I will go, unless I'm, if I'm on a lake where they're feeding on thread fins or a smaller bait fish, I may go down to like a Spook Junior kind of deal. Mm-hmm. I need to get that little. I think it's a 105. It's the size down from the 125.
Yeah,
I need to add one of those to the arsenal, but Right now, I just force feed them that 125.
Yeah, well, seems to be working for you. You still catch plenty of smaller fish on that 125, right?
Oh yeah, man. I've already caught some here at Pickwick that were half the size of the bait.
Yeah, that blows me away, man. Stephanie's got another question. She says, "What's your best fishing style? Topwater or Texas rig? Do you have a way that you like to fish more than other ways?"
Yeah, man, I get that question by guide clients a lot, and it's hard to answer because I always say whatever's working best. But I'm very confident if there's grass, submerged grass in a lake, coontail, milfoil, hydrilla, I feel like I can find some fish in it. I can't always, but that's my confidence. So anything grass related. In the spring, it's going to be more of a chatterbait, rattle bait kind of deal. In the fall, it's going to be more of a topwater, maybe swim bait kind of deal. But if a lake has grass, I've never been there before. The first thing I'm going to do is go to the grass every time. But I don't know. Probably my favorite way to catch them is that pre-spawn, ripping that Raven Red trap through submerged grass. Man, that's pretty fun.
I haven't got on that good yet. I'm always on I'm still on the jerk bait usually.
Yeah.
And then, I kind of go to like a big spinner bait during that time or a chatter bait. And I always think about, the trap thing. Cause we've got several lakes around here that have grass and it's definitely doable around here, but I always end up throwing a spinner bait or a chatter bait instead of that trap. And I keep saying I'm going to put that in my hand, a couple trips and try to figure it out, but it's just something that I haven't done. So that's a reminder. I'm going to write that down and make sure I try to figure that stuff out next year. David says, do you think the Tennessee part or Kentucky part of Kentucky Lake is best to fish these days?
I haven't been there in 3 years. Obviously, I still have buddies there that I talk to. It seems to me like the kind of the Paris to Ken Lake stretch is pretty good for numbers. That seems to be the stretch that comes up in conversation. Where back in 2010, 11, 12, if you weren't going down all the way to New Johnsonville, you were fishing for second place kind of deal. And that doesn't seem to be, I believe right now you could win a tournament anywhere on the lake right now. And 6 or 8 years ago, you couldn't say that. It was very rare for something to get won in Kentucky. But I do know smallmouth seem to be the predominant species there right now, which is, I'd love to know what that's about, because I used to catch like 8 or 10 a year. I mean, I was fishing at 250 days a year. And if I caught one, it was by accident. And now it seems like if somebody's got a limit, they've got at least 3 smallmouth in their bag. So
it's amazing. And good ones too.
Yeah. So there's some scientific reason for that. And I would like to know what it is, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah. I've heard, we've had Menendez on here and he's talked a little bit about that. And some people will say it's got to do with the water clearing up and the zebra mussels. And then maybe the way the Asian carp knocked the largemouth off of the ledges and the smallmouth are used to fishing or living a little bit deeper and they're more nomadic. And there's all kinds of theories, but those are just theories, right. Most things are just theories in life, it seems. Here's a kind of a good question. Joshua says, if you're catching a lot of really small fish in an area, would you stay in that area and try to weed through them for bigger bass or leave that area and try to find bigger fish somewhere else?
Man, that's a great question right there. And again, man, there's something I've learned in 20 years of chasing these bass. I used to think if you were good enough, like I didn't know a fishery came into play. So I thought, okay, if I'm good enough, I can catch 30-pound bags on Old Hickory Lake. I didn't realize the fishery had to support that kind of fish in order to do this stuff. So, we go back to Kentucky Lake in the 2010s. It was so good, man. If you were catching 2.5 pounders, you had to get out of there, because somewhere there was 5.5 pounders that you were catching every cast. I just got back from the Potomac River, where a keeper's 12 inches and they were hard to come by. So if you're catching anything, you better hunker down and like catch everything you can catch. I don't know. I hope that makes sense. St. Lawrence River is a good example. I could catch 2-pound smallmouth anywhere. So I ran from them. I tried to get away. If I was making a drift and catching one under 3.5 pounds, I didn't want any part of that place in a tournament. I mean, it was fun. It was fun in practice, or if you're guiding. But so just do a little research on the body of water you're fishing, and see what it takes to win tournaments. And if 50 guys are weighing in 20-pound bags and you're catching 2 or 3 pounders, then you're in the wrong area. That's kind of how I used to learn on Kentucky Lake what end I was going to fish. If I saw the northern guys were catching 20-pound bags and the southern guys were catching 16-pound bags, and I would focus on the north end, and vice versa.
Have you ever fished the north end? I didn't know you ever fished the north end of Kentucky Lake.
I think the furthest north I ever won a tournament was north. I won a BFL regional north of Blood River one time in 2000.
Yeah, which is still somewhat south. I guess you could call it mid-lake.
It was north to me, but
that's good. Yeah, it's amazing. Like those St. Lawrence River, any of those tournaments, the weights are so stacked. You come in. There's guys that come in with 18 pounds and they're in 57th place. And they'll be, 35, 20-pound bags of smallmouth. So that kind of goes back to what you were saying. It really depends on what fishery, the fishery that you're on and what it's putting out versus should you stay or should you go.
Yes. I mean, I remember back when I used to study all the pros and watch all the shows, and Van Damme always said, you never leave fish to find fish.
Yeah.
And I think that's so, it all depends on where you're at, man. I mean, back in 2014, I could sit on a school and catch 153.5 pounders, but I wasn't going to win. You know what I'm saying? Like I had to go. Hey, what's up, Phil?
Yeah, we have Phil in there. He said you need to come back and jump in the boat with him.
Woo! I don't know, buddy.
Darius says he caught some on the shower blow today on Kentucky Lake. I tell you what got me going on the shower blow was I fished a BFL. I fished the BFLs out of the back of the boat as a co-angler, and I jumped in the boat with Stephen Bargy, Ray Bargy's son, and he was jacking them on that shower blow, bone-colored shower blow of shallow. It was impressive. I think we just pulled up on a shallow point, and there was a little bit of a shad spawn going on because it was about 2 foot on the top, and he got right in a hurry, and that showed me the power of the little shower blow. So
yeah, I think the thing I like about it so much is it's so versatile in how you can walk it. You can kind of wide knock it in place, like real slow turns, but it also will walk faster than any other topwater bait in the world. And I've always been about speed when I throw it. I want it to come through there as erratic as possible. So I have tried a bunch of them, and it by far will fish faster than anything else I've ever thrown.
Yeah. And people that are on here, we are doing a giveaway. We're going to do a giveaway here in a little while. And if you're new to the channel, you'll just have to figure it out as it's going down. It won't take you long to figure out how the giveaway works, but that's going to be coming up here before too long. Phil wants to know if you're still chucking spoons.
Man, I do. I still throw a spoon. Believe it or not, I'm talking about throwing all these big baits. I've gotten to where I throw smaller spoons now. And it's funny to see things come full circle. When I first started learning to ledge fish, we kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And now that so many people understand how to fish that way, everybody throws the big stuff. So now I kind of start going the other way. Like back in 2010 to 2014, my first cast in a school of deep fish was always a big crankbait. And now that'll be the last thing I throw through there because they absolutely see it a lot more than they used to. And you can shut a school off before you even realize what you did. So now I'll start with a drop shot or a little Hopkins spoon or a little stuff like that. And once I get them to fire, I'll start bumping up to the bigger stuff. But
I remember that big spoon, man, that Ben Parker Nichols spoon. When first time I saw that, I was like, what the heck is that? That's just like massive. But then I can't remember who I was fishing with, and they caught some fish on it. So Jonathan's here. Jonathan, Brent.
Hey, what's up, Jonathan?
What's going on, Brent?
Not much, buddy.
That was ball practice.
We're working them out, man.
Working them out. Are they hitting anything yet?
No. I coach 8U travel ball. And this is the first year with a pitching machine. It's throwing it like 42 mile an hour. So it's cooking to those little ones. So
they ain't hitting any nukes yet, huh?
Well, we got like 2 or 3 kids that have seen this machine before, and they're knocking the snot out of the ball. But nice. The rest of them are just, they couldn't hit the broadside of the barn with a bass fiddle. So
that's what practice is for.
That's right. That's why we're doing this every Monday night.
Yeah, we were just kind of we've had a lot of good questions so far tonight. We're just kind of browsing through some of these questions before we get into some of these other topics. Here's kind of an interesting one. If you were to plant brush piles, not saying that you ever have, allegedly, where would it be and why? What's your thoughts on brush piles?
I never, I did it one time back in the day when I was still fishing Cheatham all the time, which for people that don't know, Cheatham was the Cumberland River between Old Hickory Lake and Lake Barkley. That's kind of where I learned how to bass fish, which is sad, but it taught me patience. But I put a bunch of Christmas trees out with like cinder blocks, and I came back that spring and they had all floated away. And I was like, man, that was too hard of work. So I was like, from now on, I'm just going to find everybody else's brush. So
there you go. That's what side scan's for.
I would say don't put them in a river system that's going to flood.
Yes. And if you do, use some real heavy blocks, man, because mine didn't work. But the biggest thing with me and brush, I can tell you this: if you have a good natural place, a hard bottom place that fish already use, you can absolutely ruin it by putting brush on.
I've heard that before. I've heard that.
I had some really good places that never held a fish again after somebody dumped brush out on them.
Really?
So you want to be really careful with it. What I used to like to look for, again, I didn't put it out, but I would look for the crappie guy's brush. Kind of things leading into spawning areas, So if the water came up real quick and then fell back down, they would have a place to stage on. That's the kind of places I look for brush, more flatter, where there's less contour to hold them, less topography on the bottom to hold the fish, where channels were silted in and somebody's laid a pile of wood out there. Mm-hmm. They would kind of use that to come and go, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I mean, a shell bed or a hard spot, they already have something to gravitate towards. You don't really need to put anything else on there.
Absolutely. If you got a place that they're using, don't ever try to make it better because it can go the wrong way real fast.
Hey, talking about those schools again, that question about if you're catching small fish, should you stay or should you leave? Do you find that if you pull up on a school, do you find that the biggest fish in the school is going to bite on the first couple casts? Or if you're catching just say 2.5, maybe 3 pounders, do you think that there's still a big fish in there and you just got to move some of those smaller fish out of the way?
That again, we talked about, this is just my opinion and theory. I have fished a lot of schools all over the country in my life. It seems like to me, it depends on the size of the majority of the fish are. I believe every school has a big fish or two in it. But if you're just catching 2-pounder after 2-pounder, the majority of those fish are going to be that size fish. If the first 2 or 3 you catch are 4 or 5 pounders, then there's probably a good amount of that size fish in there where they're out competing the small ones. I've seen it a lot in Florida. believe it or not, where in these shallow, clear lakes that I fish down there, you can actually see it with your eyes. You may cast out and hook a 2-pounder and reel him in, and he's got 52 pounders with him in an 8. And then you may throw out there and hook an 8 and reel him in, and he's got like 5 and 6 pounders swimming with him. So that's kind of, again, it's just guessing. You're just guessing, but when you're trying to put the puzzle together, if I catch big ones quick and catch some back to back, I definitely keep that spot in my mind. There's a lot of good ones in that school.
Yeah. So if you're catching small ones, you're gonna spend your time looking for the schools that got bigger ones in it, I guess.
That's what I'm gonna do. Again, unless it's a place where I'm just struggling to get a bite. I'm like, oh, finally found a school. And I may spend some time on those, catch 8 or 10 or 12 or 15 of them to see if eventually you're going to get a 3 or 4 out of that, that group of fish. But
it's a good guide spot.
It is.
Todd wants to know, have you ever fished a lake that seems like only one bait works?
I haven't personally. I do find it something that's interesting to me now that I'm traveling around the country more fishing, is how some little lakes have this little quirky technique or color that's good for that lake. Like a good example would be the Demiki rigging up in East Tennessee.
Yeah,
where they take this big-eyed, aspirin head jig and put a little tiny minnow on it. And I saw that, and I was like, man, there's got to be other places in the country that, and other times of years that this would work. And it absolutely does not so far.
No, I've tried it around here too. I've caught a few on Lake of Egypt, and I've caught a few on Cedar, but I'm talking a few and dropping on a lot of fish. It looks like it's a no-brainer. I mean, it looks like you see a fish under the boat in 15, 16 foot, and you set that on his head.
Yeah.
He's going to suck it in every time. But I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just a smallmouth thing maybe or what, but it's not as good around here as it is down in Tennessee.
Yeah. It's and every just about every lake seems to have that little local trick. And if you go into some of the local tackle stores on a new lake, you may see something odd hanging there and a bunch of it and a bunch of empty pegs, and you may want to grab one of those.
Yeah.
For that particular fish.
Frank says, congrats to you for making the Pickwick Championship.
Thank you so much, man. I don't know about legend, buddy, but I appreciate it. I appreciate it was not easy to make it, so I'm glad to get to try them here in a few weeks.
You were talking about like a niche bait, and I always remember like the first time I saw that Scrounger head with the jerky J was on Kentucky Lake, and to me that I always associated that with a specialized bait on Kentucky Lake. It probably wasn't. It probably worked on Pickwick and all the other lakes at the time, but I just remember the first time I was in a boat with somebody and they just whacked them on that Scrounger. I was like, what? I mean, I'd heard of it, but I hadn't really seen it in action. But it was convincing.
That was a frustrating deal for me because I had 1 ounce Scrounger heads and I actually had jerky J's from way back in the day because I used to be a crazy fanatical soft jerkbait guy. So if it was a soft jerkbait, I had it, but I had never put the two together. So when I threw a Scrounger head on Kentucky Lake 10 years ago, I always put a mag fluke on it or something. And I mean, it's all out of the bag now, so I'm not getting anybody in trouble. But when Lambert won his first Toyota Series event on Kentucky Lake, I had stopped in a restaurant in Paris, and Lambert's best friend was in there, and he had gone to the weigh-in, and he had had a few cold beers, and he kind of spilled the beans to me on on what Lambert was throwing. And I had a guide trip that Monday, and I went and dug my jerky J's up and put them on that head, and it was absolutely unbelievable. I mean, I was catching 5 and 6 pounders out of, what I thought were guide holes, 2-pound schools. And I was like, man, I had a whole bunch of money laying in the garage that I've slept on the last 5 years, man.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the guy that had an A-rig in his rod box for 2 or 3 years, or a whopper plopper, chatterbait. Man, there's a handful of guys that had those baits way before everybody else did, and they didn't even tie them on. They just look stupid. They're like, this ain't gonna work, and it would have worked. It would have worked really good.
Well, you guys, I heard a while ago. I was on the way up here. I was listening. You guys talk about niche baits, and I fished with your old buddy Jackson Riley in the Super down there at Kentucky.
Yeah.
And I pulled up with him, and there was some topwaters in that boat that I had never seen before. And I said, "You really catch them on these?" He goes, "Oh yeah. Don't worry about it."
They were big too.
They were huge. They were in the saltwater class, huge.
Well, I remember that the Mega Dog when it first came out. That's just a big, pretty big bait, and I saw that thing, and I'm like, wow. And it's funny after you see those and you fish them, like the shower blow, that 125. Some people may think that that's fairly big, but after you throw it a little bit, it doesn't look big. And now I look at this, and it's kind of just a normal size bait. When I look at a chug bug or something, that's completely different. That's like a lot smaller, or even a little Zara Spook, Super Spook Junior. That's small to me now. And at one time that was like normal. I got to plug this computer in.
Yeah. Especially if you lay what those fish are actually feeding on next to that bait, a 10-inch gizzard shad dwarfs that little bait right there.
Yeah. That's what I was just going to say. If you look at some of those 10, 12, 14-inch gizzards that swim out of a grass mat, that's what those 4 or 5 pounders are feeding on. Absolutely. All day long, every single day.
Absolutely.
Well, even like a 6-inch.
A 6-inch shower blow is a bite for them.
I'd say 6-inch. Like a 6-inch bluegill. That's a fairly small bluegill. Like if you're out pan fishing and you catch a 6-inch bluegill, you're like, I'm gonna throw that back. It's not much. That's not enough to mess with. But bass are eating that kind of stuff all day long.
Right.
So,
I remember the first time I saw some of those big giant swim baits down there at Kentucky Lake. It's like, what are you guys doing? Can't catch fish on that. And then all of a sudden they're weighing in 25, 27 pounds, catching 5 fish, but they're the 5 right ones. Like you said earlier, throwing the bigger baits to weed out some of the small fish in them big schools.
Yeah. I remember when I first, I used to throw the top shelf a lot, and they made a big through line version. And I took the through line out and put a big, like 1.5 ounce jig head in it. It almost got to be the point, like, we would get out there and be like, what will these things bite? Like, I'm going to throw something that won't bite. And I'll never forget, I threw that big thing. This thing's this big around, man. Like, it's like throwing a Pringles can out there. And I let it hit bottom, and I reel it. And you could feel those like 3-pounders would grab it, and like you'd get this little quick head shake. And then you just keep reeling, and you grab it, head shake. And then all of a sudden it would just be like, dunk, and nothing. And then that's when you had to lean back on him. But the hardest part was not setting the hook when you felt the initial, the first 8 or 10 fish hit it, because then you end up ripping your tail off your $12 bait and all that mess. But
that's swim bait fishing, right? I mean, if somebody's getting into swim bait fishing, I remember that being one of the most difficult things. You're not fishing a jig or a Magnum shaky head where you got to jack them. You got to keep reeling and let them load up on it.
I've got a good buddy down here at Pickwick, and he doesn't believe in setting the hook on a swim bait. He'll just kind of reel into them like a crankbait. But I still like to jerk on them a little bit. But I will try to reel until I feel it loading a little bit, and then I pop them. But
it doesn't feel right if you're not setting the hook on them.
It's my favorite thing to do, man. Menendez, the first year that Trocar came out, and they were like $2 a piece for these hooks. I got a pack of them, and the first like 5 14-inchers I set the hook on, it curls the tip over, and I was complaining about them, and Mark was like, man, they're the best hook there is. You just can't set the hook. He said, you just reel into them. And I said, dude, that's my favorite part. So I went back to using my owners, man, so I could jerk on them.
Yeah, I mean, you go out,
you take them and dull them down a little bit too, don't you? Take a file to the point of
you really have to jerk them.
You'd be surprised what I get away with, dude. I fish with some stupid stuff sometimes.
Yeah, a little rust doesn't hurt, man.
Little like a treble hook that's only got two hooks on. One of the third one's already broke off. But whatever, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's 2 hooks, right?
Heck, I caught him a couple of springs ago. I was pre-fishing. I was throwing that 70 Popar, and I rolled all the hooks under, just so it would run right, so I wouldn't catch them. I caught 4 fish that day.
I believe it.
And every one of them was hooked. They ate it so hard that they knocked that hook and just got a little piece of skin on it. They were all 3 and 4 pounders. It's like, how in the world?
So like you just said it, you hear people about taking their hooks off, but these topwater baits don't work right with no hooks. They need the weight. So I would cut mine off kind of in the bend, just as close as I could get it. But then I still had the hooks hanging for weight. And I caught a 4-pounder one day practicing for a BFL. And I had a little bit of bend left, and it just wedged right in his bone. And I mean, he jumped 3 or 4 times and still got him in. And I'm like,
how many 4-pounders with 3 hooks on there have you lost?
Exactly.
That's not right.
I told that fish, I said, I'll have about $12 worth of hooks on here Saturday, and I'll lose every one of you suckers.
I saw that picture you had on Facebook where it looked like a fish had sucked in a jerkbait so hard that it went all the way through its gills and was sticking out the back.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the story on that?
I don't know. It was in Florida, man. They love a jerkbait down there. And that's just how he came in, man. I don't know how it happens. But,
yeah, they get it sideways too in their mouth.
I've seen that.
Where they're not even really hooked. It's just wedged.
I've seen some crazy stuff, man.
Well, heck, even punching. I know you talked about fishing grass, punching grass. I don't know how many fish, smaller fish, of course, that I've hit. They came out of the mat and either landed in the boat or landed on the other side of the boat and never even.
The hook never broke the plastic.
Nope. Nope. Just bit down on the weight so hard.
Yeah. They're bad dudes, man. That's what I love about them. I mean, they're the ultimate predator, They're the baddest fish in the water.
Baddest of the bad.
And I used to be up there. I've always been fascinated by how stealthy, I call them classy. So I could be up there on those shallow bars, man, in the fall, and like my co-anchors would see a big boil or a big mud cloud, and they're like, "Ooh," and I'm like, "Nah, dude." I'm like, those big bass won't let you see them. If they don't want you to see them, you won't see them. And all of a sudden, man, you just kaboom! It explodes, and then there's a mud cloud. And I'm like, man, that's so cool to me that something that big and ferocious can be invisible when he wants to be.
And in clear water too.
Yeah.
Like Table Rock, a lake like that, 10, 15 foot visibility, and they'll be in 2 foot of water in a bush and you can't even see them. I've seen that happen a couple times with my buddy Mike. We're fishing. It's like an aquarium. You can see all the different kind of rocks down in like 10 or 15 foot of water, and he's up flipping a 3/4 ounce jig in 2 foot of water around this buck brush, and I'm like, we're wasting our time, man. And then Jack, 3-pounder. He caught 2 or 3 nice, 3 to 4 pound fish up there and nothing. And you can't see them.
Nope.
You can see that jig. You can see the jig go down, and you're like, there's not a fish within 20 miles of this place. Next thing you know, that the jig takes off and wham, there they are. It's amazing.
I used to catch them so shallow on Barkley. I said, man, I think they're like flounder, like they live on their
sit on their side.
Yeah. You got to look for the eyeballs.
Well, I mean, how many times do you roll a frog or a topwater across some of those like shallow stuff, and he just rolls up on it? It's like, I should have seen his back, because that was a 6-pounder and he was in nothing.
Yep. I mean, that was the deal with my topwater success at Kentucky Lake. I mean, they would not come out of more than like 1.5 foot of water to get it. So I was fishing from 0 to 2 foot, and it was usually pretty clear if the wind wasn't blowing. And I mean, there may be 50 of them there, 55 to 8-pounders, and you would not see them until they bit your bait.
That's amazing.
And that was.
I remember seeing some of those spots. So.
Yeah. Freaking Jackson.
It's nothing but class, man.
Well, that's what he told me that morning, Jackson. We'll go back to the Jackson story. I'll tell one on him. We're sitting there, and I asked him where we were going to, and he said, well, we'll be inside of Brent all day long if that makes you feel any better. I said, no, it doesn't. I said, are you following him down there? He goes, no. He's my buddy. We're good. I'm like, okay. But
yeah, it depends on if you're following or if you're in front.
Yeah.
You know, that's the difference.
Yeah, we had an agreement, man. You know, I kind of would explain to him what I was looking for. And, you know, then obviously I had kind of first dibs on everything. So he would take a part of the lake that I typically wouldn't fish. And, you know, if he found it, obviously it was his for the tournament, but then I got to know where it was for future events.
All right. So Norfolk Lake, what's your take on the regional? The BFL regional is at Norfolk coming up next week. I'm actually probably leaving tomorrow to go down there. It's Thursday and Friday, and then also the wild card on Fort Loudon. Any thoughts on either one of those lakes?
You guys would probably be better off talking Norfolk. I don't even know anything about it. In fact, I thought it was called Norfolk. So
Norfolk. Yeah.
And unfortunately, Fort Loudon is considered probably the worst lake on the chain, the TVA chain. That'll probably be a tough deal, but they do have smallmouth up there. You know, I would think 14 a day kind of deal at Fort Loudon, maybe. I've never been there. That's one of the few of the TVA lakes I've never been to, but I know
reach out to Odd Defoe. I think Odd Defoe's pretty good on that lake.
He's pretty dang good, man. On
any lake.
Yeah. But you know, man, every lake's tough this time of year. That's what we used to talk about. You know, the one time I got lucky and won the regional at Kentucky, if that tournament had been 3 weeks earlier, man, you know, it would have been, I think I had 17, 15, and 12, and it was the third week of October. If it had been that last week of September, it would have been like 25, 23, and 20. You know, those big ones just start getting weird again this time of year. I don't know, in that kind of fall, winter transition, but somebody will figure it out. Somebody will win it. I've never fished a tournament somebody didn't win, so don't ever let anybody tell you they're not biting, because somebody's going to catch them.
Oh, somebody's going to get paid.
Somebody always catches them, man. Yeah. It's crazy. Somebody always figures it out. Dennis wants to know, what speed do you fish the Scrounger?
Slow. And I never, you know, Jason Lambert's the number one expert on the Scrounger. That dude can tell you the thickness of every brand bill. But if you can feel it wiggling, you're fishing it too fast.
Huh.
Wow.
It's more of a steady drag, kind of like you would probably fish like a hard head or wobble head, whatever they call them, biffle head.
Mm-hmm.
is how I had luck with it. And they're not all created equal either, man. Like, you know, some of them have a really hard wobble, and I always wanted the ones with the tightest little wobble.
And which one is that?
Davis makes a really good one. Davis Baits in Alabama. Back in the day, Scrounger was the good one. And then, you know, like everything else that's good, they had to revamp it and came out with a piece of junk.
Yeah.
Lambert designed one for, is it Katana, I think? He says it's pretty good. I've thrown it a little bit, but you'd be surprised how little ledge fishing I do now, man. I'm not, if there's any other way to catch one, I'm going to go try that, because the ledges are too crowded for me. But that was a big fish catching bait, man. That's, I guess the biggest one I ever caught out of a deep school on Kentucky Lake was 8.5. And, you know, it was, because typically out there you're fishing more for like the 5-pound class fish. But I caught a lot of 7+s on that Scrounger back in the day. I don't know.
Did you use like the long bill or the short bill?
I always use the long bill.
Okay.
The one I used to use the most was Tennessee River Tackle, Zach Kreider. And then Zach, I don't know if he sold out or he just shut down. But when I found out he was closing up shop, I ordered like 100 of them from him, and I've still got some of those. And then I also probably the best one still available is that Davis 1 ounce long bill.
You're a smart man. You know, you find something that's good and you order 100 of them, because it's no different than your favorite pair of jeans. When they wore out, you go wherever to buy them and they're gone. They've been discontinued for years.
Well, you know, a whopper plopper, the new whopper ploppers don't even work right anymore, man. I've got about 30 original whopper ploppers that I've been offered a lot of money for, and I won't take it because you can't get them like they used to be.
Yeah. So this is kind of an interesting question. You're talking about all those big baits, like the saltwater fishing baits on small lakes. So the big baits, are they worth throwing in small lakes? What's your opinion on that?
I think absolutely. If you feel like you have big bass in there, absolutely. You know, one thing I've learned in Florida, especially, again, man, I've spent a lot of time on these small waters down there in Florida where I can actually visibly watch these fish react a lot of times. A big bait, bass are very curious. And that's why you hear about glide baits pulling so many fish out, you know, like, oh, he followed it up, but he wouldn't bite it. That kind of deal. There's just something about, you know, something big and intrusive coming into their territory, man, that they won't always eat it, but worst case, you'll learn what lives in there if you throw it long enough. You know, you may have to come back.
Like you said, they're curious creatures, and they're the dominant species in most of our fisheries.
Yes.
And they're wondering what in the hell this thing that's swimming around is going to do, and do I need to eat it, or is it going to eat me?
Right.
So, and I know the lake that Stephanie's talking about in Southern Illinois, and so does Gabe. And yes, those big baits do work over there.
You can throw big baits there,
and you can catch some big fish throwing those big baits.
Yeah, you may not catch a bunch, but when you catch one, it's probably going to be a better than average fish.
Is it a warm water place?
No, it's just a regular lake.
Not Egypt.
Not Egypt, but it might work there too.
Egypt is no longer a warm water lake.
Yeah, they shut the power plant down. Yep. Well, it's still running on about 30% capacity, and last year was the first year it's froze up in forever. There was 1 million shad up right there by that hot water discharge, and there was 1 million birds sitting there just pecking on them all winter long. There's just a little area that was open, and the whole lake was froze, but it didn't hurt it. I think it's still really good. In fact, the grass has come back the last 2 years, like really good. It's a lot better lake than it was 2 years ago, in my opinion.
I see my boy JoJo Walsh has commented over there. Don't be talking about that Geneva Conda.
I see JoJo Walsh up there in the BFL standings pretty high most of the time. He does pretty good down there.
Hey, when you guys were talking about the topwater baits, did you talk about Retrieve or anything like that? Or am I overstepping my bounds here?
He talked about working it fast, but we didn't go off on it too much. Okay.
Yeah, my belief was always bring it as fast as I could bring it. And I felt like if I brought it through there at that speed, one of them would give in, you know, and attack it. But I was talking to a guy the other day. There was a couple times that my co-anglers, they should have smoked me, but they usually didn't know how to walk the dog, so they would throw it out, and you know, it'd be kind of an awkward twitch, and they would have this slow, kind of long drifting deal. And these were the days, like, you go back and look at the stats. I weighed in like 2 that day, and he probably only had 1, but he had like 25 pounds worth of bites, kind of deal. Yeah. But I could not make myself, even while it was going on that day, I was like, okay, I need to slow it down because he's getting some big blow-ups, but he can't land them with his 12-pound monofilament, you know, with his little stock hooks or whatever. And I just can't slow down that slow. Unless I know it's sitting over a stump or a piece of brush, you know, then I can kind of slow it down and make it sit there. But just out there in open, you know, flat water, I just believe that day in and day out, the more casts I made, the more bites I was going to get.
When you throw one today, is that still
so fast, man? So fast. I reel it so fast.
Do you fish fast in general? Like, not just topwater, but overall?
Yeah.
Is it hard to you to sit and just soak something for a long time?
I can't
drag it real slow?
Man.
Okay.
And you know, they're towards the end. I never did a lot of good in ledge tournaments. Once I learned how to ledge fish, I won some in like 09, 08, and 09 before I knew what I was doing. But I would have so many schools found once I really learned what to look for. I'd pull up and make 3 casts, and if I don't catch what I'm after, I'm going to the next one. And then as people started learning where to look, once you left your starting hole, you may not get on another spot the rest of the day, because there'd be 4 boats sitting on it. And I've never been a pull in and fish next to people person. So there's been a lot of days I've been down at Paris just doing circles around the mouth of Big Sandy, waiting on somebody to leave a hole, But I started seeing guys that I had taken on electronics trips to learn ledge fishing, start beating me in ledge tournaments. And I'd talk to him like, man, what'd you do? He's like, well, I found 2 good schools and I just sit on one of them all day. And I'm like, oh, I had 48 schools and I tried to fish them all.
Yeah. Yep.
And I really only got to fish like 2 of them.
So you didn't care to go in behind somebody?
I didn't mind at all going in behind somebody, but I cannot pull up next to somebody.
Right.
Man. So I've even had guys wave me in, come on, man, and pull up, and they catch them, and I don't. It's just like this mental block I have fishing next to people. I can't.
That's that old school block of that's not how you fish.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing, bro. I really do, man. I got a video coming out where I got a taste of a guy coming in too close. He wasn't fishing next to me, but just on the water boat etiquette, that kind of stuff where people just blow right by you when you're out there fishing on the point. So I respect that, man. There's a lot of places to fish, and you're talking about leaving like a ledge to go find another ledge. You may pull up to a ledge and it looks all pristine and beautiful, and somebody just left 5 minutes ago with 25 pounds, and right. Somebody like you can still figure it out if the fish are there. But a lot of times it's and the reason I say that is because like around here we got a lot of small lakes. So what you were talking about, the guy that had 2 schools and he fished them all day and you had 40 plus, a lot of these guys that do good around here, they stay on one little stretch of bank for hours and hours, and they'll catch a fish each pass, and they'll come back and they'll catch a fish, and eventually one of the right fish will move up and they'll catch them and do good in a tournament. So there's like a couple trains of thought on that. Do you fish 40 brush piles a day, or do you just milk the 2 or 3 for all that they have? And I mean, both ways work, just
they do. I guess that's what keeps it interesting, because you never know whose approach is going to be the winning approach. But I don't know. Oh man, I knew what I was going to say and I just lost it. I want to be a fellow up at Barren River, and I only had 2 schools. So I would fish one for 2 or 3 hours. I'd go to the next one for 2 or 3 hours. I'd come back, and it was killing me the whole time. I'm telling my co-angler, like, man, we got to go. We got to go. We got to go. We got to go. And then boom, I catch one. So it's not what I like to do, but I can do it if I have to. But probably what started hurting me towards the end on Kentucky Lake is just knowing so many different ways that you might catch one. It was really hard to settle down there, because I'm like, if I'm not catching 5-pounders on every throw, one of my competitors is. I got to go.
On Kentucky Lake, was the fishing, you saw the fishing kind of decline? Was that part of the reason why you decided to start fishing other places, or did you just get burnout on it, or is it none of my business? I mean,
no, it's your business. I was really bored there. That place looks so big. It just, the first time you see it, but after you had fished it as much as I had, I could like drive over the Paris Bridge and look out through there and be like, oh, they get there, they're there. Like you're not going to catch any in all the rest of that water, but they live right there, right there, right there. And I just kind of got tired of looking at that same water every day. And I'm not going to say I knew everything, obviously, or I would have won every tournament, but I had fished so much of it, and once you fish a place that's unproductive 3 or 4 times, it's just hard to keep going back there. Like maybe they'll get here one day. But I was kind of in a rut, not a rut, but I was complacent because my guide customers were coming. I was still having decent enough tournament success for me to do anything else. So then when it just got terrible, the year I decided I had to go, there were no fish on the ledges, 0. And every one of my customers I had booked in June wanted to go scan ledges. And I was going back in feeder creeks and flipping and stuff and catching, 20, 30 fish a day, and even some big ones up to 7.5 pounders. And they didn't want to do it. They wanted to go scan. And one group told me that they would rather scan for 8 hours and never stand up than go fish shallow and catch fish. And that night I called them all. And I said, you can either cancel, come down and we'll go fishing, just fishing, or I'll go to Pickwick in July and we'll do a ledge trip. And every single one of them wanted to go to Pickwick because you can scan them year round at Pickwick. There's always some fish out here. They may not be the winning kind, but there's always some to look at and throw at. So that was
because the Asian carp haven't got to Pickwick yet, or?
Oh, buddy, they're here, man.
Bad.
They're here. I just saw more the last couple of days than I've ever seen here.
Oh, wow.
Like start your engine and the whole water erupts, kind of like it. It's, and I don't even think they're concerned yet. I'm like, man, they should be working on this right.
There hasn't been a lot of talk about Pickwick. It's just been Kentucky.
Yeah. I think they kind of hope it'll just be contained there, but it's not. Man, there's a ton. We actually caught a couple, snagged a couple the other day. I've been in a boat where more Asian carp got snagged here than I ever saw snagged on Kentucky Lake. So that'll tell you they're pretty prevalent.
Wow. They're in Chick too.
I would imagine they're all the way up the system, to be honest.
I saw one in Chick, like in a regional, like years ago. I had about a 30 pounder behind my swim jig.
Yeah.
That was probably 5 years ago, 6 years ago, something like that. So it's a shame, man. So when did you start noticing that the ledges didn't have bass on them anymore? What year was that?
I always use this example because everybody was like, you can't see them all. And I'm like, I know that, but I think in 2016, I had 97 schools between Jonathan Creek and Danville that were pretty consistent schools, I mean, day in and day out, if I looked at those 97 places, 90% of them would be there schooled up. The next year I went to about 48 schools. Next year I went to 20 something schools. The next year I went to 11 schools. The next year I went to 0 schools. So, in my mind, I was like, this population is getting cut in half every year. Of course, some guys believed that they were just living in different places, that we weren't fishing. But I'm like, people are fishing everywhere. They're fishing from the bank out to the middle of the river channel. So I knew pretty much that first year when it went from 97 to 48. And then that next year, that kind of made me wonder, like, what happened to 50 of my schools? And then the next year when it got cut in half again, I was like, man, we got a problem.
And a lot of these probably aren't community holes either. They're, not spots that everybody's fishing.
Yeah, I mean, it was both. But one way I used to kind of look at it and describe it, I called it like overflow parking. And to me, the community holes were always going to be the first place they wanted to go to. Like that, they had the best ingredients, right, to hold a school of fish. And then when it had so many fish on it, this little group would branch off and go to the next best place and the next best place. And that year I had 90 something schools I was fishing regularly. I mean, they were on they were on just some junk. Like, it goes from 20 to 21 and the current hits it. There's a school there. They were everywhere.
Yeah. I like that overflow parking.
Yeah. And then those were the first ones to go, when I go to the next year and I go from 90 something to 40 something, like those real sneaky weird ones were the ones that didn't have fish on them. And then the next year they were only on like the super obvious community holes. And then the next year they were on like 10 of the community holes. And then the next year they just never showed up.
Yeah, that's a good, I mean, that makes sense, that logic, because it took there just wasn't enough fish to filter out into the littler areas or the less conducive areas.
Yeah.
Wow.
Will it come back?
I'm sure it will. I don't know if it will in our lifetime, at least to the point. Will it ever be what it was in the early 2010s? Probably not, because I think fishing's too popular, and people are too good.
We can see everything now with all the new technology.
Yeah. And I just don't think. I think it's going to be hard for any lake to ever be that unbelievable again, because so many people. OHIV last year was a good example. OHIV hasn't been talked about in 15 years, and they go down there and catch like a 16 and a 15 last winter, and that weekend there's 2,000 boats out there.
Yep.
And these places just can't handle it, man. I will go to my grave believing that we murdered the fish on Kentucky Lake. Like, that's what happened to them. The cart kept them from replenishing, but the big ones weren't affected by the cart. They were affected by tournament after tournament after tournament. Right after they spawn, when they're out there 20 plus foot deep, getting drugged all over from New Johnsonville to the dam and back. And I hate to say it, but
was there a lake that was as good as Kentucky in 2010?
Falcon Lake's the best largemouth fishing I ever saw down in South Texas. It was like Kentucky Lake times 10 on steroids, and maybe a little crack too.
Still
a little bit of everything.
It got they had a big drought down there,
right?
And it basically turned into a river channel. And there's different rumors of fishing pressure plus alligator gar ate a lot of them, plus maybe largemouth bass fires got in there. But yeah, we legit used to go down there and catch. The best 5 I ever weighed down there was 42.8.
Holy cow!
Yeah,
that's pretty almost good sack, a 9-pound average.
Yeah, we fished a tournament down there one year, a bass champs, and we had 23 something and finished 97th. It took 45 to win and 35 to get a check.
Ah.
And they paid 30 something places, so it was insane.
That's.
Did you know you were going to get beat that bad coming in with 23 pounds?
Oh yeah, I did, because I had been there before, but it was a weird. Like, we didn't practice; we just kind of showed up for the tournament, and we didn't even weigh them in, honestly. But I had weighed them on my scales.
You probably got lashes. They, like, if you brought in under 25, they'd make you pull down your pants and give you like 5 lashes.
Well, the way they did it, man, because they stayed in touch. The check-in boat stayed in touch with the tournament director, and he would tell him the check weight. And when you checked in, they would tell you the check weight. And if you didn't have enough to get a check, they wanted you to throw them back. And when we checked in, it was taking 27 to get a check. So
I like that idea. I've heard of tournaments doing that. Like, say it's a Wednesday nighter and it's 3-fish derby, and when you pull into the marina, they say, hey, if you don't have this weight, just throw your fish back. It's not even worth it. It keeps those fish from getting stressed out. And back to Kentucky Lake and the tournament fishing, maybe causing the population to decrease. I've been seeing that a little bit around here. Some of these, we got one lake here locally that gets a lot of pressure. They have a Wednesday nighter, and then they have sometimes they have a Friday nighter, and then they have a Saturday and Sunday tournament. And there's 2 boat ramps, and the lake's less than 2,000 acres. So you've got basically 4 tournaments going on every week, maybe like 8 tournaments. It depends, maybe closer to 8 tournaments. But we've been noticing these fish, you catch a nice quality, 4 or 5 pounder, and it's got a real skinny gut. And this is, I don't think it's that summer gut thing. I think it's different. I just think that, sometimes when you release these fish after they've been sitting in a live well all day, they it takes them a long time to get their health back and start feeding.
Yeah.
Maybe not. I don't know that that's true, but it just seems like we've been seeing that a lot.
You could relate it to, let me throw you in a wooden box, drive you around a bumpy lake for,
right,
8 hours, and I bet you're going to be sick and you're not going to eat for a couple days after you get done.
PTSD, man.
You're exactly right, man. That's exactly what it is.
Every time a frog or a shower blows goes over your head, you run the other direction. You don't eat for 3 days.
Yeah.
Well, that, you know, I've got a little bit of like a biology background. It's with snakes, not fish, but they're very similar. You know, they're both cold-blooded, and so I've always really kind of been more. I fish to be able to study the fish, if that makes any sense. Like I'm more intrigued by trying to find out what makes them tick, but I'm scared of the water, so I can't dive.
Can you swim?
I'm scared. So my best way to study these things is to be on the water with them every day. You know, chase them around with electronics, catch them. But that's kind of what keeps me going with it, man. It's not as much the catching.
Scared of the water.
Yeah, I don't like to get in the water, man, if I can't see my toes. But and I'm not scared of snakes, so I don't know what I think is going to get me down there. But maybe a Sasquatch, I don't know.
It's possible. It's possible. Sasquatches,
they are good swimmers.
You never know, man. You never know.
You never know, man, when you can't see your toes.
Especially down there in East Tennessee, they could be sneaking. They could swim in off the bank and just kind of come in behind you and start tickling your toes, and there you go.
But anyways, I had pretty good relationships with the tournament, you know, release guys and stuff. And man, some of those guys used to tell me they thought 70% of those fish we caught in summer died, even if they swam off. You know, like we
70%.
Yeah, and you know that was
mortality.
That was their guess.
Wow.
Some of them were down closer to, you know, 40%, but it was a lot.
Even if they're half right, I mean that's bad.
Yeah. And I felt like a pretty good theory on, you know, they're and Pickwick is in this situation right now. You can, you know, those fish got harder and harder to catch, right? I'm sure you guys remember hearing about, man, I sat on a school of 100 of them. I couldn't get them to bite.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in 2014, there was no such thing as not being able to get them to bite. I mean, you drop a dog turd down there and you're going to catch something. But I believe, you know, just like you hear big deer, some big deer will never get seen, never get shot. And some bass will never, you know, they're wired to never bite an artificial bait. So I think what we were left with were the smart fish. You know, we caught all the aggressive, easy to fool fish.
Mm-hmm.
So those schools kept getting smaller, but harder to catch because they were just a genetically smarter animal we were dealing with.
I've seen, I wish I knew the exact details of this study, but it's a real interesting study where they took fish from a pond, the aggressive fish that they caught more than once or twice, and they put them in a separate pond.
Yeah.
And then they took, basically you had, when it was all said and done, you had the fish that would not bite. They refused to bite any kind of artificial lure. And then you had the fish that were more aggressive in another pond. And then there was some breeding going on between let's call them the dumb fish and the smart fish. And those genetics were passed on. Like the offspring of the smart fish,
yeah,
they had a tendency to be smart again, and the dumb fish had a tendency to be dumb again. And that's interesting. It's just, I mean, it works like that in humans too, possibly. But you don't
said it, not me. I was gonna say it.
I just call it what it is, man. But
you know, I think smart and dumb, it's not the right word to use. It's more probably aggressive. You know, they're just born more aggressive, and
right.
It's easier when you're talking about it to say smart and dumb, but.
Yeah.
But I mean, like I say, I believe that with all my heart that was what I saw go down. I saw so many fish; they were living in overflow places, and then you know all the aggressive ones over the next 3 years got caught, weighed in, didn't survive, and then eventually we were left with smaller groups of fish on the more obvious community holes that were genetically harder to trick into biting a piece of plastic, and that's why they were so hard to catch. Man, you can sit out here on Pickwick on a school of 1,000 fish, and you can sit there for hours with a drop shot and catch 2. I mean, they're the hardest ledge fish, and I mean that's good that there's that many of them down there that aren't willing to bite, because that's, you know, that it's going to take us longer to eliminate them, but it's pretty crazy, like how smart they've gotten the last 10 or 12 years out there.
Evolved.
Evolved. Yes.
But I mean, you know, it's Mother Nature. That they're not gonna let us catch them all. At least I didn't think that. They kind of did on Kentucky Lake, but even if those fish are still left, you know, that group of smart ones was what we were left with to get the population reboot started. Now we're fishing for a much harder to catch fish. So your numbers are still going to be.
So they're genetically superior as far as knowing how to avoid artificial baits, and they've got the pressure thrown on top of that. So you have a genetically superior fish that's also been educated, which makes them even smarter.
This is why Brent doesn't get in the water, and I understand it now.
Yeah,
because we're training these fish to
attack.
They're
going to start jumping in the boat.
Man, I was this close. I was getting really comfortable with my fish in Florida, and I was this close to where I was going to start diving down there. Yeah. Because we had 2 private lakes down there, and last, season 2, I think the month of April, we caught like 30 something over 8 pounds out of this one lake.
Jeez.
And that's when John Cox was coming down and filming. And I mean, it was just, I had like 8-year-olds catching 8 and 9 pounders. It was unbelievable.
How big is this lake?
They're 200 acres.
Oh my.
Oh, geez.
So come back, fast forward to the next year, to 2021. And we caught 1 7-pounder, 1 6-pounder, 1 5-pounder, and everything else was 4 pounds or less.
Huh.
So it was driving me nuts, man, to know, did something happen to them? You know, are they still here? And they just, you know, they're like, oh, you tricked me once, you're not going to trick me again, kind of deal. But like, I was really needing to get in that water and see what was going on, because I mean, it went from, you know, John's lived in Florida his whole life, and he said, this is the best place I've ever been. And then it went from that to being like, I'm scared to take anybody out here because I don't know if we're going to catch anything, kind of deal.
Did it come back or not?
As of when I left in April, it was still, I mean, the numbers came back. We were catching 100 a day, but the big ones were like not happening, man. Not happening.
Hey, speaking of John Cox, we had Keith Carson on here a couple weeks ago.
Oh, really?
Keith won the points in the MPFL. Yeah. So congratulations to him.
Absolutely, man.
Pretty cool dude, man.
He's awesome.
Him and Cox are good buddies.
Yeah, he was actually with John. They came out and filmed with us, or they filmed a benefit deal for Crestliner out on our lakes in Florida. So
okay.
I know both those boys pretty good.
We have a winner. We had a winner a while ago, but we were right in the middle of a good conversation. I didn't want to cut it short. So no surprise, Stephanie won again. She's won 3 times. She just has a knack for that number. But I also saw Joshua Harris on here. The number was 7. And so Stephanie had it first, but Joshua, we're going to go ahead and get you out a Cumberland Pro and a Hawgz Custom Baits package, a little sampler package, so you can take it out on the lake and catch you some fall bass. And probably not next week, but the following week, we're going to be doing like a technique-specific giveaway. Jeff Moon Auto Body over in Illinois, he got a hold of me and he said, hey, can I donate a little bit to help kind of kick up the giveaway? And I said, yeah, sure. So what we're going to do is we're going to do like a bladed jig giveaway where me and Jonathan are going to pick out some of our favorite colors and trailers and stuff. And then we're going to do maybe a Topwater, and then we're going to go like frog, and we'll have, 6 or 7 giveaway, like technique specific giveaways over the next 7 or 8 live streams.
Kind of like the bait boxes that you get.
Kind of like a bait box, but stuff that you'll use, stuff that you'll want.
Yeah. Stuff that we use around here.
Yeah. So that's coming. And Stephanie and Josh, I will probably I'm heading for Norfolk in the morning, and I'm going to be down there until Friday, hopefully Saturday. Jonathan's saying Saturday because that's day 3. So I like that a lot better than Friday, but we'll see. So I'll probably be able to get that stuff in the mail for you next week. So just hang tight, and that'll be on the way eventually.
I'm studying Stephanie's strategy over here.
Yeah, I see what she's doing.
She's got a pretty good. I see what she's doing there. That's pretty smart.
She's a pro. Phil's kind of got he's going by tens. I said he said 115, 125, 135, 145. So that's another strategy. I don't know what she does, but
Stephanie, Darius,
she's a pro.
Stephanie, what's your Powerball numbers for this week?
Hey,
I can't remember if it's this week or if it's hit, but it's up there. 5, 6, 7 million. So.
Yeah. Hey man, Phil Crowfoot just sent you y'all need to check this thing out. He makes the coolest lure retriever that I've ever seen, and he's wanting to send you one for a giveaway.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah.
This thing is bad to the bone, man. I'm serious. I've got one.
Yeah, Phil, shoot me a message on Instagram, 10 Horse Monty 6, or you can get a hold of me on Facebook at Gabe Montgomery Fishing or 10 Horse Monty. Yeah, well, definitely. That'd be a great giveaway.
It's a bad dude, man. It's cool. It's a cool design.
Man, a lure retriever is a must-have. I got Doug Cheatham was on here. He also makes a lure retriever called Auto Trieve, and I had one on, on a reel. The hound dog on a reel, and I never really used it because it's kind of a pain in the butt. But when you got something out there and it works, it's amazing how often you'll use it and how much how often you get your bait back. It's pretty much, it's like 90% of the time you'll get that thing back, and you save your rod tips and
I go through so many rod tips, man, because I like to throw my junk down the line like that.
Oh, you get extreme. I haven't went that far yet.
I carry rod tips in my boat, man. That's how many I bust up.
Good stuff.
Oh, yeah, I saw a guy just ask about, finicky fishing live bait. I was kind of real quick going to go back to how the genetics of how these fish are wired.
Yeah, definitely.
I think yes, they will a lot of times, and me and John Cox got me to trying to hand feed some of our fish in Florida. And it's crazy, like how different personalities these things have. Like I had a group of about 5 or 6 5-pound class fish that I was feeding tilapia fillets. And like some of them you could hang it 6 inches above the water surface and they'll come out and take it out of your hand. And then there's like others that are just like, oh, I want to do it, but I'm not going to do it. But you could definitely see that, they're not all wired the same. They don't all think the same. And I did this every day for like a month, and either they ate out of your hand immediately or they would not eat out of your hand. So some of them are definitely more, leery than others.
You're not the fish whisperer, are you?
I wish, man. I wish.
Well, no, have you seen that guy on Facebook that he feeds those live shad to the fish like that?
Oh no, that's not me.
Okay.
I don't know, because he never shows his face, so I was just wondering if that was you.
Oh no, that's not me. No, y'all would have to see my dumb face if I was going to be on there.
Yeah, because those are whatever he's feeding are absolute tanks.
They're janks, man.
Yeah, John had some like 10 pounders that, Easter he would feed them those little peeps, those little and then like around Christmas he had
You mean real peeps or the sugar peeps?
The little sugar peeps, the little.
Oh, I thought you meant the real like little duckies. He'd throw little ducklings out in the water.
No, man.
Okay.
And then at Christmas he had a elf on the shelf with a fishing rod, and he like hovered it out above them, and they came up and ate something off the thing. He was always doing something cool with them, but he kind of taught me how to train mine to start eating out of my hand a little bit. But.
So did any of the ones that were hesitant? Did they ever come around and start feeding out of your hand?
No,
that's interesting.
They would come to the surface and stop, and then as soon as it hit the water, like I could dangle it in the water. As soon as I opened my fingers, eat it.
So that I just random thought as a fisherman here, because this is what we think about. Do you think that fish would eat a topwater?
Those real aggressive ones did, because they bailed me out on some trips.
Okay.
But
do you think some of those fish that are let's call them timid or shy would shy away from a topwater that's coming across them like that?
I think they may. I think it would depend.
I may have opened up a can of worms here, and everybody's mind's going to be racing now why I can't catch them on topwater. But you got my mind working like, why in the world will some fish eat it and the other ones will just come up there and blast it?
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's on a bigger level. you know that I would see this on Kentucky Lake, and I thought I had it figured out that it was a water level. Like, okay, the water's at 357.5. They won't eat top water. Now it's at 357. They will. So I thought it was something that simple. Well, in Florida, our levels didn't fluctuate, but there would be a window, and it wouldn't be temperature. It wouldn't be. I mean, I never could put my finger on what it was, but they would go from not eating top. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
They would go from not eating top water to it's the only thing we're going to throw. And this may last for like 3 weeks. But the only way to keep up with it is while I was on a trip, I would always be occasionally throwing a top water around. And as soon as it started, it was like, it's the only thing you want. But, you know, I kept up with water temps and moon phases and time of year and length of day and all that. And there never was a pattern to why they all of a sudden every fish in the lake is eating the top water, other than it's just what they wanted.
Was there particular days that worked better than others? Bluebird, slick, windy, cloudy?
Once they started on it, man, it was every day.
Okay.
Interesting.
It was every day.
I've noticed that with the grass fishing with frogs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Once it turns on and the water temperature gets I think it's a lot for us. It's with grass. It's a lot of the water temperature. When the bait's in the grass, it makes them be in the grass. But once that water temperature gets to a certain level, I mean, it's lights out for if you're the first one there, hang on.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I think, you know, there's so many variables that we'll never figure out, which is why we keep going. But I felt like that situation I had down there was a good, you know, learning grounds to try to learn as much as I could about their behavior. And it confused me even more, to be honest.
Hey, Alan, yeah,
they do
get a hold of me. Get a hold of me if you want to send some star jigs, and we'll do a giveaway on it. So check this out. I got one of the questions I wanted to ask you. We'll ask you a few more questions here, and we'll let you slide. You've been on here for an hour and a half. It's been awesome. It's a lot of good content on here. But I was fishing the other day, and I was throwing a spook, and no bites. You know, I mean, some bluegill bites, but nothing. So I kind of wrote it off. That's what I've been catching some fish on lately. That's kind of been my little confidence bait. And, you know, I fished a shaky head and jig, caught a few fish. And then I thought, well, I'm going to throw a buzz bait. It's got a different action. It's not a walking bait. It's a moving bait. And, I mean, that is what they wanted more than anything. More than a shaky head, more than a jig, obviously more than a spook. They wanted a buzz bait. And as soon as I started throwing that, I started getting bites, and it just became like, okay, there's no reason to I can take all my other rods and just throw them out in the water. You know, right. I don't need anything else but a buzz bait. And that's what I threw. So how does that work? When do you know how to go from a walking bait to like a plopper to a buzz bait? I mean, if it's top water season, do you have a rotation you go through, or do you just try one? If they don't bite it, then you kind of write it off. Do you have a strategy for all that?
Man, I don't, other than confidence. I do really like a buzz bait when there's a lot of small bait in the water. A lot of, you know, when they're coming up through those clouds of that little minnows flickering on the top and they're coming up through them. I love a buzz bait in that situation because I think it's more of a sound than a visual deal.
Okay.
You know, I don't think they're targeting that one big shad. They're just like, oh, there's a ruckus on the surface, I'm going to go slash at it kind of deal. But I mainly like the ploppers and the walking baits because I can throw them so far and cover so much water with them. I saw a guy ask earlier about using a leader to his braid.
Yeah,
and
right.
I personally have always used straight braid for my walking baits and my ploppers. I use Power Pro and also Cigar Smackdown, and I use like 65. I use pretty heavy. But I put one little spool of mono for backing, and then I fill my spool up. And me and my buddy like thrown it out in the yard and counted it off, and we cast at about 75 yards with 65-pound braid, and that'll be to your spool.
That's that's a cast.
And you're covering some ground when you're making those kind of casts, you know.
That's why I went to 50.
So you could cast further?
Just to get that little extra, because I was on a frog, I was spooling 65. So
yeah. Well, I played around with 50. And what I was noticing is I was probably some casts I would get. I couldn't spool 50, but I could spool 65. So it just made me feel like I was
casting.
I knew I was getting every bit of what my reel had to offer. But I always liked the bigger because to me it floated better, and you know, it's a thicker knot, so you got less chance of coming through your split rings. I had lost some big fish where your line that smaller braid would pop through your split ring. Also started changing to the oval split rings where your line's always in the you know, it's forced to be in the top of the bend.
Yeah, right.
It doesn't roll on you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Josh. Have Dave send you your shipping information to me. Dave's a good guy. Let me see if we got any more questions in here real quick. Yeah, somebody said old Brent is the spook whisperer.
That's my boy Billy Knowles, man.
Spook whisperer.
Oh, spook whisperer.
I think we could have Brent on for a whole spook show.
That's probably what I have done most of this stuff with. But I've kind of cooled off. You know, I had a pretty good run with it back in the day, man, and now I'm not so much.
And you know, and this is a selfish question because I just want to know for myself. When you're throwing that spook, you're running it super erratic. You're not just typical walk the dog. It's diving, dipping, slashing up and down, or is it? Can you keep it in a consistent pattern, reel it that fast?
Well, that was one thing with the spook. I would fish it as fast as I could and still keep it. You know, I don't want it diving and stuff.
Okay.
I want it to be kind of a smooth. And then the thing with that little shower blow, if you walk it fast enough, man, it almost looks like a little snake. Like it's a real tight. I mean, it'll fly. And that's one reason I like it, because I don't think you were here yet, but Gabe and I were talking. It's really versatile, all the things you can do with it. I mean, you can make it turn around. You know, if you're over a stump, you can twitch it and give it slack and it'll turn around and go the other way, or you can.
Yeah,
and I'm not sponsored by these guys or anything, man. I'm just being straight up. I think it's the best one on the market right now.
It's got that nice one knock sound to it.
Yeah.
I like it.
And that 150's sick too, man. I've caught a lot of fish on that 150.
What do you throw that on, rod wise?
I designed that rod for redemption rods. It's called the Brent Anderson Big Topwater rod, and I throw all of my topwaters on it from a popper up to a 150. I use that rod. It's a 7-foot medium heavy, but it's got a little bit of a tip, and I love it.
Doesn't wear you out as bad with that tip.
It doesn't, man. I can do it all day, every day. And the tip, I wish I had like some video of me walking it, but you see a lot of guys that have this whole big, and mine is like all in the tip of the rod. It's just like, in the I don't know. It's hard to explain it without showing you, but I put very little arm and wrist motion into it. I just kind of get the tip of the rod wiggling, and it kind of does all the work for you. But it's got enough backbone when you hook a 7-pounder out there 75 yards away that she's usually coming in.
So a lot of that's the rod, getting the right rod to match the walking bait. Yes.
And I'm sure a lot of brands have a good one. But when these guys started Redemption up, they were friends of mine, and they asked me if I wanted to get involved, and I was like, absolutely. So I kind of took the 3 best features from Topwater rods I was currently using and kind of meshed it into one. And it came back a prototype, and we made a few changes, and it's actually on like its 3.0 right now, third generation. We've actually made it a little thinner, but it has the same action and same backbone, but it's a little bit lighter, and it was already super light. So
that makes sense, because the BFL Super that I fished with Jackson, the next day I could not throw a topwater because we threw a topwater all day long and we didn't put it down. And the next day I went to work the topwater because I made the second day and it didn't move. It just went because I couldn't. My arm could not make the motion anymore. I was just trash.
That's when you pick up a buzzbait.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I did.
Well, I mean, it makes a huge difference, man. And I mean, people don't understand. Back in the day, I was throwing this thing for 12 hours a day for, 8 or 10 days in a row.
Right.
And I may go 3 or 4 days and not get a bite. It wasn't all like
sunshine
fun
and
times out there. I just knew that if I found what I was looking for, it was gonna go down. So I looked until I found it, and sometimes I didn't find it. But you know what I did in those tournaments? I kept looking. It weighed in 1 or 2.
There you go, man. What's up, Rich? Good to see Rich in here. He says he uses 40 to 50 pound braid on most topwaters that are not frogs. And Rich is intrigued by the topwater theory. Nothing like some good topwater theory. And bass fishing is just theories. It's like it's hard to pin down exactly why anything works and why. I don't know. I'm out there all the time thinking about why does that work and why is this not working? And then, the next day something else is working and something else is not working. And like you said earlier, Brent, I think that's what keeps us going back out there is because there's so many variables, and it's like I don't want to say it's like a complete mystery. I mean, there's some stuff that makes sense, but there's also little tweaks that is kind of the magic of fishing that you just have to go out there and figure it out for that day. It's like every day is just a little bit different. It's kind of like being a kid again, man.
It's like that puzzle that your kid stole like 3 pieces out of, and you're trying to put it together, and you got to look for those 3 pieces that.
Yeah. Yep. They may be under the couch. They may be in the garbage disposal behind the trash can. You don't know where they're at, man, but they're there somewhere.
And the guys that can put it together the quickest are
that's
the
true.
Guys that are number 1, 2, 3 in the world right now.
Right.
That's the key. You nailed it, man. That's tournament fishing right there. If it takes you 4 hours to put it together and it takes somebody else 2 hours to put it together.
That's always been my biggest weakness, man, is I'm not good at putting it together fast. But if I had a strength, it would be, really believing in this is a way to win and then just forcing it to work. And when I can make it work, it usually comes out good for me. But all those other times, like I'm not the guy that's like, oh man, this deal ain't going to work. I'm going to go throw a shaky head at Rip Rap and catch 12 pounds and get a check. Like I'm not real good at that. So you usually see me like in the top 20 or in the hundreds,
Yeah,
kind of a hero or zero kind of deal. But it's not. I mean, it's just like my brain doesn't work like that. I'm amazed by these guys that can just every day, make an adjustment.
Well, you see the biggest change is like going from the Toyotas or the Opens to the Elite Series or the Tour. You got with the Opens, I know you got endless practice essentially.
Yeah.
And as long as you can afford to be there, you can practice for it. When you get to the top level of the sport that we all try to achieve, it's
3 days, basically.
2.5, 3 days.
Yeah.
Yes.
To put it all together. So you got to make that puzzle happen and make it last for 4 days. So you got 2.5, 3 days to put a puzzle together and then make it last for the next 4 days.
Yes.
So it's got to be an ever evolving plan. You can't just say, I'm going to go and catch them on XYZ and hope to God that I have,
Yeah, you got to go out with an open mind each day.
That I have 20 fish that I can weigh, take across the stage. So
that's super impressive.
I don't know, man. I've got to play against those boys enough. I don't think some people realize how good some guys are. I believe it's a natural gift that a lot of guys are born with. I got in an argument with a guy, not an argument, but a disagreement. He said, man, that's bullcrap. Anybody can be as good as anybody. And I said, I thought that when I started this journey 20 years ago. I said, but that's like saying if I wanted to be Kobe Bryant, I could have practiced enough and been Kobe Bryant, And he was like, well, no, because you got to be born 6'8" and whatever. And I'm like, no, man, it's the same thing. I'm like, some people can run down the lake and just know that there's a 6-pounder in that tree over there. And I was like, I don't have that. I have to have it all figured out in practice. Like I can usually tell you going into the tournament where I'm going to catch one and why. And, if I don't, then it's like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
What do I do now? That's a killer question right there, man.
It is. What helps you keep a positive mental attitude?
That's I think that's the biggest. My buddy David Genevico did a seminar a few years ago. He was charging like $200 for people to come to the seminar, and he fed everybody, had giveaways, but it was all on the mental side of fishing. And everybody was like, man, that's stupid, but it's too much. And I'm like, you'll go to Bass Pro and you'll spend $500 a week on a new color on a magic bait. And I'm like, what this guy's offering is most people won't talk about. But David and I think that's why we became such good friends, because we thought a lot alike. He's a lot smarter than I am. But when it came to fishing, I always knew that I wasn't as good as most everybody else. So I had to look for ways. So a good example would be on Kentucky Lake. If I'm at the BFL meeting and everybody's talking about how the wind's going to blow 30 tomorrow, what am I going to do? I was like, he's beat. Like, I don't have to worry about him. And this guy's like, oh man, it's going to be cloudy tomorrow. I've been catching them in the sun. I'm like, he's beat. I don't have to worry about him. So I always take the negative things I can't control and use that as a positive, if that makes sense. So as other people are worried about things, the wind and the weather, they're already beat to me. Like, so now I've got this smaller group of guys that I've actually got to compete against. And that's kind of, so when I get out there, even if I'm struggling, I'm like, well, so-and-so and so-and-so are already worried about the wind. They're already beat today. I don't have to worry about those guys. I've got to worry about these 15 or 20 guys right here. So every fish I catch is going to get me closer to my goal of beating those guys. I know I kind of butchered that, but how I was
you nailed it, man. That makes total sense.
It's hard to not fall into that too. That's the biggest challenge to overcome, in my opinion, is to not fall into that doc talk or that negativity.
Yes.
That, how many thousands of dollars have we all wasted because of somebody caught a big one on you name it. I mean, you talked about a bait a while ago on the phone that they're tearing them up on Norfolk and
right.
You went out and bought 3 of them.
I only bought one.
Okay, one.
Because I already had 2.
Okay, there you go. But you get what I'm saying. I mean, we've all done that. I went down to Kentucky Lake, and it was guaranteed to spend, $200 every trip down there.
Yeah, you're trying to buy confidence, and that, like you said, there's so much psychology in bass fishing. It's it's people have no problem. Well, you take like a mega bass jerkbait, $25. It's a great jerkbait, yes, and I won't knock it. I've caught a lot of fish on them. I think they're a superior jerkbait. But let's be honest, you're paying for a little bit of confidence by paying for paying $25 for something. There's a little bit of confidence, I think, when you make that purchase. And there's other baits that are like that. So you want fishing can be hard. I mean, fishing's hard sometimes. So why not? People don't have a problem paying a little bit more for a little bit of confidence. And that's that psychology thing. And it transfers over to tournament fishing too. There's a lot of mind games that go on out there on those days when you're struggling. It's like it's 1 o'clock and you've got 1 bite or 2 bites. And you're like, man, I suck. It's like, I fish this lake all the time. Why can I not catch fish here? It's like, what's going on here? And it starts eating on you, starts chewing in your craw, and next thing you know, you're spun out and you're trying this bait that's been in the back of your boat forever, and you haven't pulled it out. And for some reason, they're going to bite on that, right?
Yep.
For whatever reason. It's crazy, man. It's crazy stuff.
That's. I think some people take it too serious. I mean, a lot of times I'm like, I feel myself getting into that spin out mode, and I'm like, oh wait, it's a bass tournament. There's another one tomorrow. Like, there's another one Wednesday. Like, if I screw this one up, I can just go get another one and try to make it right. I mean, it's not the end of the world. So, without not saying I take it serious, obviously, and I try to keep my foot on the gas. But at the end of the day, it's like, man, why am I going to wreck my nerves over this. It's just a bass tournament. And, you know, when you start fishing for 250 grand and stuff, it's get a little more. Ooh, I need to catch them, but day in and day out, it's just a bass tournament, man. Worst case is you're not going to catch them.
That's great, man. You got to keep it in perspective. Like you said, it is what it is, and some days people don't catch them. It doesn't matter. You can talk to anybody that's, you know, the top of the top. Odd Defoe, Akinelli, you know, KVD, any of the names, Swindle, what, you know, anybody you can think of, and they have days where it just doesn't, you know, come together. It's just normal. And then talking about other people in a tournament, you hear people say, well, I'm fishing this tournament and so-and-so showed up, man, you know,
fishing for second place.
I'm fishing for second place. Well,
you already beat.
I tell you what, if you look at a tournament on just about any given lake where there's consistent weekly tournaments, it takes a certain amount of weight to win almost every time. It varies a little bit, but there's a weight. There's a winning weight, and it doesn't matter who's in the tournament. You're still going to have to catch that weight to win.
It's between you and the fish, man.
It's between you and the fish. Yeah. That's right, man. Every time. And we fish around here. We fish some of these local tournaments, and it doesn't matter who's in the tournament. Like, you know, like we were just saying, you still got to catch that. Like at Cedar here locally, you got to catch 12 to 13 pounds every time. You know, it's just the way it is. It doesn't matter if, you know, Billy Joe Bob is in it or the best team on the lake is in it. It's still going to take that 13 pounds. Every once in a while, somebody will catch 14 or 15.
And for you guys out there, just go and look at tournament history on the lake that you're fishing. I think you guys were talking about that earlier. Mm-hmm. You look at the tournament history, you know what it's going to take to win on a lake. You can see that there's so much public information out there now. It's not like in the 90s where, you know, you had to guess what, you know, they were catching. It's all public information. Go out there and look and find out.
The weight's not mysteriously going to go up 5 pounds because Brian Thrift and Jacob Wheeler showed up.
No. And you said that because it depends on what quality of fish are in the lake. Right. You know, that's what determines the amount of fish they're going to catch. And if you're not catching that
on Cedar,
you're probably not going to win.
I told a buddy that last year. I said, you know, you look back at the tournament statistics. If you catch 11 pounds in every tournament, which we have a slot limit lake, so it's not like we have a terrible lake here, but it's 11 pounds. You're going to either get a check or you're going to win Angler of the Year, guaranteed. Every year, 11 pounds gets a check in almost every single tournament. And he's like, no. He looked back like 10 years, and every single tournament, 11 pounds got a check in.
Yeah.
And everybody wants to catch.
But it didn't win.
Everybody wanted to catch 14 to win.
Right.
But second place was, you know, 11 because somebody had 2 7s. Yeah. You know.
Yeah.
I'm with Hella Bass right there. I mean, like I'm coming out there to fish that Mizzou Invitational in November at Lake of the Ozarks, man. It's going to be me and the 30 best pros in Missouri. And you talk about being in a corner, son. But I love it. I mean, I love fishing against those guys, man. Sikora and Lawyer and Stacy King. And, I mean, they're all going to be there. Fitzpatrick.
Yeah.
Burhorst.
Yeah. You got your hands full, but so what, man? You still got to have to catch 22 pounds or whatever.
22 every day, man. I don't know. I get fired up when them guys show up, man.
You got the same odds as winning as the next guy.
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe not in that field. But you know, then I set my goals a little lower. You know, my goal every year in that event is to make a top 10. Like, I feel like I've really accomplished something against that field.
Yeah.
But I definitely don't get scared like, oh, I'm not coming, man, because I can't compete with those guys. That's the beauty of fishing, man. You know, you can fish against the best in the world 10 times and you're going to beat them a couple times. And most sports aren't like that, where just an average Joe can compete at the top level every once in a while.
You're not going to go down to Daytona and run 500 laps with Earnhardt.
Yeah. I'm probably not going to play Michael Jordan or LeBron James 1-on-1 100 times and beat them at all. But if I fish against whoever's at the top of the heap right now, I'm going to beat them every once in a while.
Right. Is that the golf one down at Ozarks?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
How's your golf game?
Oh, it's horrible.
At least you're honest.
The first time I fished it, it cost us making the cut, making the top 10 because I couldn't even make a putt.
Have you been practicing
for golf?
Yeah.
No, I hate it.
You got a big boat. You got a big front deck, man. You need to take your seat pedestal out there and kind of widen it out. Get you some, practice your little 5-foot putts there on the front deck.
Dude, the only time I go golfing is when I think fishing, when I hate fishing and I'm ready to quit. I go to the driving range and I come running back to fishing.
You just whack, unload. Good stuff, man. All right. Let me see if I got one more question and we're going to wrap this sucker up. This has been a blast.
Mike Russell, Old Blue.
Yeah, you know old Mike Russell?
Yeah, man.
All right.
I know Old Blue too.
What's Old Blue?
I don't know Old Blue, but I could find out possibly.
Yeah.
It's a big old prop bait, man. That's legendary.
Okay.
It's a hush hush one. Is that what we're saying?
Man, people get mad at me because I talk about anything. I'm not. I think there's so much more about where you throw it than what you throw. So
yeah, well, that's true.
I'm not real secretive about lures for the most.
Well, see, I was worried about when I mentioned some of that stuff earlier that old Jackson had landed at the bottom of his boat.
Oh man, that's all good. I've got so many musky baits that I use that I wouldn't even know where to find again if I lost them. I mean, but again, I think 99% of it is where you're throwing it, not what you're throwing.
Well, that one bait looked just kind of like that, but it was about triple the size and about 3 inches in diameter.
It might have been a 9. It might have been my 9-pin.
It was your 9-pin.
Oh, you showed that to me. Yeah,
I got a picture with my hand next to it, and I'm like, oh my god,
that's a gangster bait, man. That thing is massive.
Did you ever catch any on that?
I did, man. I always had it on, and I said, if I ever catch a 30 bag, I'm going to throw this the rest of the day. And I caught some 30 bags running that pattern in practice, but I think the closest I ever got in a tournament was like 28 something.
So you did throw that bait?
Absolutely.
You didn't throw that on your medium heavy?
No, I threw it on a flipping stick.
Okay.
It weighs like 6 ounces.
Yeah, I was going to say there's no way.
Yeah, it was a big boy.
Yeah, you had like a little slingshot there that you went to shoot it out to get it out there.
Good God.
All right, I'll tell you real quick how the big bait thing with me. What I first realized when I started learning the topwater deal in Kentucky is that if I had them located, they would still bite. It didn't matter how big the waves got; they would come up. But I had to find baits that would walk in certain, as the waves got bigger. Gotcha. So kind of my rotation was a super spook. And then when it got too choppy for that, I went to a chugging spook, which sets a little different in the water and actually walks better. And then my third and final was a 7-inch pencil popper, just the old Cordell pencil popper. But in a BFL one day, I always had the pencil popper there just for giant waves. In a BFL one day, I caught like 18 or 19 off a stretch. And I told my co-angler, I said, man, that ain't going to get it done. Like, I'd found some really big ones on another spot and they wouldn't bite. I said, man, I'm going to go back through where I caught that 19, and it was dead slick that day. But I picked up that 7-inch pencil popper, and I called every one of those 19 pounds. And I actually had one pull a split ring off that day. That's probably the biggest one I ever hooked on topwater. But I ended up with like 24 something. And that kind of let me know that it had a place, not only when it was just 5-foot waves. Like there's a time that you can use it in calm water. Again, trying to deter those little 3-pounders, which now 3-pounders are gold up there, but back then they were kind of a nuisance. But anyways, sorry, man, I keep rambling.
No, that's good information.
Every time I mention topwater, he gets this little look in his eye.
His eyes light up. Yeah. I got one more question for you. We'll let you go.
All right, brother.
So, what is one bait that you always have tied on no matter where you go? I guess a confidence bait, something that you just feel like you need to have it locked and loaded.
Man, it's kind of changed. The first 10 years of my fishing career, it would have been a black and gold right bite tube. I felt like I could pull that bait out and get a bite anywhere. And then around 2010, it kind of went into, I've always got a big topwater on, always. It's almost like my security blanket. I may never take it out of the rod locker, but I can peep in there and know she's ready if I need it.
Say hi to her.
Yeah. And here the last few years, man, that jackhammer has really been good to me. Like I've caught some fish I probably shouldn't have caught in some scenarios that you probably wouldn't use it. But I still carry my black and gold tubes. I just don't always have one laying on the deck. But they're kind of like my little security blanket. I got them in the just in case. That's a good question, but kind of a tough one for me because I fish so many different scenarios now. You know, I may be fishing 60-foot smallmouth and on St. Lawrence, and then be in Florida next month, kind of deal. So you kind of got to be a little more versatile, I think, on that question.
Yeah, depending
on how much you travel. Then I mean, a football jig, a 3/4 ounce football jig, man. I mean, you can do so much with it. I've caught them flipping it in hard times. I've caught them dragging it in a foot of water. I've caught them 60 foot deep in Texas on it. Caught them swimming it. So there's 4.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a good answer. I mean, I'm with you, man. It's hard to narrow it down, but man, a jig is versatile, isn't it? Like just a football jig. It's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, you could swim it through grass around docks and drag it, stroke it, just
half-ounce jigs never leaves my boat. So.
No, it's amazing.
And see, I even use that 3/4. I mean, I throw that 3/4 in some dirt shallow football. I mean, I've even flipped bushes with it. Like
that's one thing that I'm going to work on next spring is throwing a heavier baits in shallower water. I've heard that a lot on this live.
Yeah, we've been doing it. Several people have said that
3/4 ounce jig in a foot of water
instead of going, lighten it up. Sometimes they go the other way. They go heavy on it.
I've always thought, 95% of the bass you catch are on the bottom, so I want it to be down there with them as quickly and as much as possible throughout the day. I'm not anal about baits and things, but I'm anal about efficiency. Like, I try to cut out as much wasted time in a day as I can. And if I've got to wait an extra 10 seconds for my bait to get to the bottom over the course of 8 hours, that's several more casts I could have made.
That's true, man. That makes
and I've won some money on the last cast of the day a lot of times. I mean, keeping a bait wet in the right water, to me is very important for tournament success. But
for sure.
Excellent.
Again, that's my theory and my kind of approach. And I think you have to have one that you believe in. They're all different, but I used to do a lot of electronics trips, and these customers would come back to me and they would have like 4 screens set up. They would have they're trying to do my system here, Ben Parker's system here, another guy's system here. And I'm like, man, it don't matter whose system you use, just pick one and get confidence in it. There's not a right or wrong way. But the whole idea that I used to preach is you want as much of that screen dedicated to your side imaging as you could get, because that's where you're looking for your fish. And now he's put me in a little corner up here, so he's totally defeating the purpose of what I was preaching. So, I don't know. I think everybody should get a system, a few baits they have confidence in, and efficient, man. Just be as efficient as possible.
Heck yeah.
I wish I would have done one of those electronics trips with you back years ago. It would shorten my learning curve by, a year and a half.
Yeah, man. And that's what I was trying to do was I knew everybody was going to learn it anyways. So like, we're paying $10,000 for electronics, man. Let's get everybody getting the best out of them. At the end of the day, man, I get a kick out of seeing people have success fishing, because I know how hard it was for me. I mean, I started at rock bottom, dude, and had no help. And I'm more into, I mean, like I said, I guided half the BFL guys I used to fish against. That seems like kind of counterproductive,
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think they had so much respect for me being willing to help them as competitors. They never showed up on anything I showed them.
That's cool.
They took what they learned and put my butt a few times, but
right.
But that makes you feel good. I mean, what you're teaching somebody is, I mean, it's helping.
You're not teaching them a spot. You're teaching them how to find a spot.
Yes, and that's what I love to hear, man. When I hated getting the call, can you mark a map up for me? If you called and told me that you were trying to learn something, I would tell you everything that I could tell you, man. The good and the bad and the ugly. Because I know how much that would have meant to me when I started. And don't get me wrong, I've had a lot of mentors, but I kind of had to burst onto the scene before people started wanting to talk to me. Like I started having to have a little bit of success before I started making these friendships that where we shared info, because everybody was like so scared you're trying to snoop in and steal their hole. And I've always said, if you don't want me fishing a hole, the best thing to do is tell me where it's at, because then I won't go there.
Yeah. That's cool. That's interesting. I
like the way you put that, though.
Yeah, I know.
Well, you're on my hole. Was buddy, your name sitting there on it? I found it too.
Yeah. Well, my buddy Doug. I'll say this real quick, and then we can roll out of here. But my buddy Doug took me fishing on Wapapello, and there was this really good looking riprap bank, and I said, "Man, that looks really good." And he's like, "Oh yeah, there's fish over there. It's holding fish." And I said, "Well, let's go fishing." He's like, "I can't fish it because my buddy told me that it's holding fish. Yeah. If he wouldn't have told me that it was holding fish, we'd be over there fishing it right now. But since he told me, I can't go over there now." Just because it's not right. And you got to respect that, man. That's that kind of that old school mentality. But it's something like that. I think it's not just old school. It's like the right mentality. It's respect, man. It's just respect. And that's going to get you further in life than anything else.
It is, man. And, even from a fishing standpoint, I feel like the guys that are actually trying to learn how to do it on their own are in it for the right reason. They're not looking for just a quick buck or a quick trophy or a quick, hey, I beat, I won my 12 boat club tournament today kind of deal. I don't know. I've got one BFL that I would not have won without a hole a buddy gave me. And I still look at that trophy, dude. I can pick it out and be like, it's just like it's got a big asterisk on it. Like, I didn't really win that. That 13.5 spent pretty good, though.
I hope you bought him a cheeseburger or something.
I did, man.
Good.
But I was so stubborn. I ran by that spot like 4 times that day. And at noon, I didn't have a fish. And I was like, man, I don't want to do this. Like, finally, I pulled in there and caught 21 pounds in like 30 minutes. I was like, gosh, dang it. In my defense, I didn't catch any there the second day. I caught them on my own, but still.
There you go. Hey, man, sometimes you got to use that stuff. It's there. Sometimes you got to use it. So, all right, man, we're going to shut this down. It's been a little over 2 hours. Brent, it has been awesome. I really appreciate you coming on here. And we'll have to have you on here sometime down the road and talk Florida fishing. I wanted to get into Florida fishing and the guiding and maybe some more electronic stuff. And so you're a guide. If somebody wanted to book a trip with you when things slow down, how can they get a hold of you?
Right now, Facebook or Instagram, and Brent Anderson Fishing on either one. We're kind of having there's some discussion going on about what's going to happen in Florida this year. I don't know if the private lake deal is going to continue.
Okay.
I am still going to Florida, and we are still going to do live or artificial only, and we're still going to guarantee catching. But right now it's going to be on Kenansville and Headwaters, which are 2 smaller public lakes down there that are unbelievable. And that's going to fire up in January.
Okay.
So just give me a shout. All of my contact info is on my social media stuff, Facebook and Instagram.
And you'll be heading up north too, right?
Yeah, that'll be next summer. We'll be starting that July the 1st of 2022, guide trips on Lake Ontario and the St. Lawrence River. And that will be guaranteed the time of your life. I can't even explain it, man.
If you guys that are watching this have guys and gals have never been up north to catch smallmouth, it's like a 55-gallon bucket list, man. You need to put it on there. It's a good one.
I've been very blessed to get to do some cool stuff and be on some really good lakes at the right time. And that's the only thing, no matter how long I get to stay up there, when I have to leave, I'm sad, man. I don't want to come home, but
I got to leave with this.
They freeze up in the winter, so they get a little pressure taken off of them too.
Yeah, they get some relief. I just had to throw that out there just for a little smarty pants comment. He says he wants a bluegill trip in Florida. So
I don't know. You might go. We got some videos of our bluegill trips, man. We
got some big ones.
We catch 2-pound red ears down there on the reg. So
hey, that sounds fun. That sounds fun to me, man. Yeah. All right, man. We'll let you go. Good luck on Pickwick, man. We're pulling for you. Everybody
Thanks,
on
buddy.
Gonna be following
man. Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm sorry I made y'all go over, but I appreciate it, dude. I'm gonna try my best. You know, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. So again, don't look for me to be either look in the top of the leaderboard or look down in the hundreds, because that's where I'm probably gonna land.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna go out there and bunt.
Hey, man, we'll understand.
It's not worth it to bunt that one, is it?
Nah, man. Nah.
That's all or nothing.
That's right. If you ain't first, you're last.
That's right, brother.
All right, Brent. We'll talk to you later. Appreciate it once again.
Thanks, man. Take care, guys.
Brent. Later.